The holding cells of Station Zerath 9 were designed for one purpose: breaking spirits before bodies gave out. Kara Lorne understood this the moment the Velkari slavers threw her into the cramped cage, her ribs already aching from their casual brutality. Another human, one guard clicked in their chittering language, mandibles spreading in what passed for amusement among their insectoid species. This one will last a week, perhaps two. Kara pressed herself against the cold metal wall, assessing her surroundings through the haze of pain. The cell block stretched endlessly in both directions, each cage holding a different species. Some she recognized, most she didn't. But it was the creature in the adjacent cage that caught her attention. A cub, barely past infancy by the looks of it, covered in midnight black fur with distinctive crimson markings along its spine, its eyes, ancient and knowing despite its youth, fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Drex of the Bloodfang, the creature spoke in perfect galactic standard, its voice a low rumble that seemed too deep for its small frame. That is what they named me when they took me from the breeding pits. Kara nodded slowly. Kara Lorne, freight hauler. Was, anyway. The days began to blur. The Velkari employed a calculated cruelty in their operation. Food came irregularly, just enough to prevent death but never enough to restore strength. Water was similarly rationed. Kara watched other prisoners deteriorate, their cries growing weaker until they fell silent entirely. But Drex fascinated her. The cub received even less than the others, sometimes going 3 days without sustenance. Yet he never weakened. If anything, he seemed to grow stronger, his eyes brighter, his movements more fluid. How? Kara whispered one night, her own stomach cramping with hunger. Drex's lips curled back, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. They feed me, human. They simply don't realize it yet. On the 8th day, the first guard died. It happened during feeding time. The Velkari named Thresh approached Drex's cage with the usual contempt, shoving a bowl of putrid scraps through the slot. His chittering laughter echoed through the cell block. Then he stopped. His mandibles twitched once, twice. Green ichor began seeping from the joints in his exoskeleton. What? Thresh managed before collapsing, his body convulsing violently. Drex watched impassively, licking his paw with deliberate slowness. Feast number 1. He murmured. The other guards rushed in, dragging their fallen comrade away. They examined the food, the cage, found nothing amiss. Thresh was labeled as having contracted some native pathogen. Unfortunate, but these things happened. Kara stared at the cub. What did you do? I am Bloodfang, Drex replied simply. We do not need food brought to us, Kara Lorne. We make food of those who think themselves our masters. 3 more guards fell over the next week. The Velkari grew paranoid, checking everything, changing their routines, wearing protective gear. It made no difference. The affliction, if that's what it was, seemed to strike randomly, reducing their strongest warriors to writhing husks in minutes. Kara began to understand. She noticed how Drex's gaze would follow certain guards, how he would inhale deeply when they passed, how his pupils would dilate with an almost predatory satisfaction. The Bloodfang weren't being starved at all. They were hunting. Your species, she said carefully. You're obligate psychic predators, aren't you? Drex's rumbling laugh was answer enough. The Velkari know many things about many species. But the Bloodfang were thought extinct a millennium ago. They do not remember what we truly are. And what's that? Patient! The deaths accelerated. 6 guards in 2 days, then 9. The Velkari leadership descended into chaos, their rigid hierarchy fracturing as paranoia took hold. They stopped feeding the prisoners entirely, convinced the food supply was contaminated. They sealed sections of the station, quarantined entire wings. Kara's body weakened further. She could barely stand now, her vision swimming. But Drex was magnificent. His juvenile form had given way to something else, larger, more defined. The red markings along his spine now pulsed with a bioluminescent glow. You're growing, she rasped. Maturing, Drex corrected. Every fear, every moment of terror I consume from them accelerates the process. They starved me thinking it would break me. Instead, they provided a feast unlike any my clan has known in generations. On the 21st day, the station's commander made a fatal decision. He would execute all the prisoners, eliminate every possible vector of contamination. Guards armed with plasma rifles assembled outside the cell blocks. Drex stood, and Kara finally saw him for what he truly was. Not a cub, but something ancient wearing youth as camouflage. The air around him shimmered with psychic energy so intense she could taste copper on her tongue. "They starved you," Drex said, his voice carrying to every corner of the station. That was their first mistake. The screaming began. Kara never saw exactly what happened. Her consciousness faded in and out as psychic pressure flooded the station. She caught glimpses. Guards dropping their weapons, clawing at their own exoskeletons, fleeing in mindless terror from shadows that weren't there. The Velkari's greatest strength, their rigid hive mind efficiency, became their downfall as Drex's assault cascaded through their neural network. When she woke, the cell door was open. Bodies littered the corridor, not all of them dead, but all of them broken. Drex stood before her, now the size of a human adult, his form rippling with barely contained power. "Can you walk?" he asked. Kara tried, failed. Drex lifted her effortlessly, cradling her with surprising gentleness. "Why save me?" she managed. "Because you understood, Kara Lorne. You saw what they could not, that starvation is only effective against prey, and we Bloodfang are never ever prey." As Drex carried her through the silent station toward the docking bays, Kara couldn't help but smile. The Velkari had captured a cub and a human, thinking them weak, controllable. They'd forgotten the first rule of survival in a hostile galaxy. Humans were adaptable, yes, but they weren't the only species that thrived on adversity. They just tended to make the best witnesses when others did.